should we get going? Probably we'll have some more people join. We have more register, and I'll keep my eye on the list in the waiting room. But thanks for joining everyone for our first ever Making It as a Maker. So my name is Jared Reynolds. I work at UNH Cooperative Extension and then on the board of the Concord Makerspace in Making Matters, New Hampshire. I know we have a bunch of other Concord Makerspace people on here. And then I'm joined by Brendan D'Angelo from the Claremont Makerspace and Allison Chisholm, who is with the River Valley Community College's new business incubator. We have three panelists today. Our goal is just to kind of have a, somewhat a panel of makers from all different types of backgrounds. So we have three, and they're Connor Spurn, Eric Diven, and Amity Olis. And we were going to start off, we have a couple of questions that we were going to ask each, and then we were going to open it up for anyone to ask questions on if you want to know more about their making business, any lessons they might have learned, whatever you may want to know. I know we are now well into Zoom life, and it looks like just about everybody is muted, which is great, just to take care of any background noise, but you can mute and unmute yourself. When it comes to asking questions, you can either open up your chat and just type a question in there. I see a lot of people are already using the chat, and I'll keep my eye on that and can read the question out loud if you feel more comfortable, if it's to a general question or to one of the specific panelists, or you're welcome to unmute yourself. We might have more people joining. So the best way is if you do the hand raise function, which I have just learned to do since it was changed it, but you click on the reactions, which is either in the bottom or the top of your screen. And then when you click on that, you'll see the hand raise. And the goal is just to get as many people asking questions as possible. Any questions before we get going? Allison.
Jared, can I do an unscripted interrupt, which is, I would love it since people are still joining or whatever, I would love it to just, if everybody would just type into the chat, if you are a maker, kind of what your making profile is, and then also if you're attached to one of the maker spaces that is represented here or another maker space in New Hampshire or Vermont, because the variety of makers is so amazing to me in this part of the world. So I'd just be curious about that. If people would type that in, that might be helpful to our panelists too, so they can speak to commonalities or distinctions.
Perfect. Thank you, Allison. So I'm going to start us off with a question, and then I think Brendan has a question, and then Allison. So my question is just a quick introduction from each of our three maker panelists. Who you are, what your business is, what your maker business is, and any other information that you might want to kick us off with. Connor, do you want to get us started? I'll put you on the spot.
Sure. Hi, my name is Connor Spurn. I am attached to the Concord Pennacook Making Matters New Hampshire Makerspace. I actually work full-time as a development director for a nonprofit in Concord known as the Friends Program, and for a couple of other nonprofits in the city as well. So making kind of started as a hobby for me. I always considered myself artsy, but not really an artist. I actually didn't start really trying different mediums until probably 2016. I was always the first person picked to make a poster in school because they knew it would look good if I did it. But like, other than that, I didn't really do art classes. I was always band. So I was musically inclined, and that is kind of really My grandmother is an artist, and I have artists in my life, but I never really was one. I have tried, so some background, I used to work in custom framing at Michael's. So we got an employee discount. And so I really started to experiment with different mediums that it actually was introduced to through framing. So people would come in and they're watercolor artists, oil paintings, cross stitch was a big one that I used to do. So I kind of started from there. I just started trying everything from watercolor, oil, acrylic. I tried cross stitching, but really what got me going was embroidery, actually. So I started kind of as an embroidery artist, but I always created my own patterns. So it kind of started there. So it really built up my graphic design skill set, which started as in 7th grade, just editing, adding text to your friends' photos that say like, "Rar is I love you" and dinosaur. It was that was my phase of school. And so that just really kind of boosted that from, again, a hobby into something that when I created it was my own design, color combinations, anything like that. And then I kind of moved into what I now kind of focus my art on, is earring, and as an earring artist. And so I mostly do polymer clay and now acrylic. Thank you to the Glowforge at the Makerspace. So I'm sure I'll talk a little bit more about that, but those are the two mediums that I really kind of find myself considering myself an artist of. So yeah.
Thanks, Connor. Amity, do you want to just give us a little background?
Sure. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, good. Hi, I'm Amity. I feel like I change my favorite things every year or two, so I bounce around everywhere. Currently, right now, I'm doing automotive upholstery, and I've been studying for that for a couple years, and now I've got a wait list until September, which is starting to scare me. But yeah, I really like to sew, but I also like things that are hard, and upholstery just seemed to be the right thing to do because it is hard. There's a lot of angles, and it looks easier than what it really is, so I'm really enjoying it. In the other worlds, I'm also a CPA. Again, I like hard things. But I got really sick of sitting for 70 hours a week, and as much as I love it, it's hard to do that much sitting for that long when I have all these ideas in my head. So I've been trying to balance more between that and accounting and upholstery. And then, I also own a dance studio, which is where I'm at right now. So I stay busy, but I don't know, I just like creating things.
Thank you. Eric.
The obligatory, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. So I come at this from a somewhat different background. I went to school to become a programmer and did that for about 10 years. And my now wife got tired of me waking up and saying something like, "I don't want to go to work today." And she's like, "Well, why don't you take some classes to become something else that you might want to do on a daily basis?" To cut a long story short, I took some woodworking classes and then eventually went to school full-time for it. I've been now doing this professionally for 2 years, and I work out of the Claremont Makerspace, which is how I am involved with this crew. So yeah, that's the short version. I build furniture primarily.
Great. Thanks, Eric. Let me pull up the question I have here. Sorry. This is Brendan from the Claremont Makerspace. Thanks, everybody, for joining, and thanks to all the panelists. I'll start with Eric for this question. What have been your keys to success in making, and what lessons have you learned?
Oh man, there's sort of embedded an assumption in that I feel really successful. I mean, I think one of the things that has been interesting and helpful is trying to go and get out and get exposure to people. Before I moved up to the Upper Valley area, I lived in Somerville, Massachusetts, and I had a number of neighbors who were aware of the fact that I, built furniture and whatnot. And, it's a lot of people had a lot of like, "Oh, wouldn't it be nice if there was somebody who could," kind of projects. And, we invited them all over for open studios because we were afraid that nobody would show up. And they showed up along with, you know, a whole mess of other people. And I think one of the things that was really helpful for them is to see the variety of work that I can do and the variety of styles it can be in, and to go and try to then be able to start mapping that onto the projects that they have in mind for their own space. I think that really helps people envision, you know, oh, I don't quite like that, but I could see something sort of like that in that style in my space. So I think going and having people be able to see and touch and interact with your work is a really huge asset that is, you know, kind of challenging for all of us to do right now. So I think that's been a big one, definitely.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. Amity, how about you? Any keys to success in making and any lessons that you have learned?
Oh, geez. I think it's when other people started looking at me like I was supposed to know what I was doing. And I was like, wait, how did I become the expert? But I think with any small biz or any maker type thing, you know, you have to set your own goals and not compare yourself to others. And I think that's the biggest challenge, especially when we're online right now. So I think you have to define your own definition of success rather than, you know, going on Instagram and looking at what everyone else is doing. But you can definitely burn out easily when you jump in wholeheartedly and you don't have balance or guidelines or what's the word I'm looking for? Um, being willing to step away for a little bit when you get frustrated. And I think that's for me has been the biggest help is that, you know, when you don't feel like you're doing the right things, or if you don't feel like you're succeeding, is just to step away for a little bit and come back to it. Does that answer your question?
That does. Yes. Thank you. And Connor, any?
I definitely think mine is a combination of both of the prior answers. So I was lucky enough to have, I have a large professional network I've built through, like, at the time, in-person networking. So I just have like a lot of connections that I already had. So people who are already following me on Instagram or Facebook, just from those connections. So I think when I started really putting my art out there, there was already kind of a little bit of an audience for myself. But I definitely have to agree with I definitely believe in social media as a sales tool. I will say that like a majority of my sales that have come outside of my friends group have come from social media, and knowing how to properly use things like hashtags, and the proper way to engage with specifically an Instagram algorithm, because that constantly changes. So researching that and keeping on top of it. I think it's also lucky for me that specifically the polymer clay community is a really supportive community. So I'm actually wearing someone else's polymer clay earrings right now. I thought about it after. I should have worn my own. But that tends to be a lot of how it is. So a lot of us buy from each other and we share each other. So I think one of the success things for me has been engaging with other artists of the same medium, because people are really willing to give you that love back. And I that's definitely built my following. But I definitely think the balance of like limiting yourself when you're taking in inspiration or other people's work, and like setting that boundary from when it crosses inspiration into imposter syndrome and feeling like what you're doing isn't matching up to others. Because, and I do this too, like everything's about the photo, the angle, the finished product, how many hours people have time to put into things. So I definitely think Amity's right and making sure you have that balance of being comfortable with where you're at artistically, and then being okay with the creative ebb and flow, because everyone has that. And I think it's just people build a stock of media to put out for the times that they're not actively creating. They just have stuff to keep putting out anyway. So it's, again, that balance of making sure you have enough to take you through that ebb. And I'm definitely in a creative ebb right now. I will share that right now. I haven't made anything in a couple weeks. Yeah, and Mary's completely right there too. So when I'm pricing things, I absolutely look at Etsy and other artists to see where are they pricing their things in comparison to the quality that I'm putting out. And then making sure that do you feel like you would buy your product at that price? That's really, and then taking yourself out of the equation, kind of looking at your work objectively is very helpful too.
That's kind of a nice follow on to the sort of, you can tell that our questions are kind of past, present, future oriented, because we wanted to get a little bit of the arc of the journey. And so the final starter question, so to speak, is where is your growing edge, or what are your goals that you've set for yourself in this time? And maybe, Connor, yours is just to come out of your ebb. I don't know. Or maybe, as I see in the chat, maybe it's that I noticed, Eric, you did not answer, am I making money? So like the maybe it's to make money in a meaningful way, or maybe the goals are about your art evolving, or your skill evolving, or being able to have your first employee. Amity, you shared at some point an interesting goal of maybe involving your father in the business. So why don't we just start with you, Amity? Like, where do you see the future? What are you looking forward to? What's the next step in this journey for you?
Oh, geez. So my backstory is I was a CPA, corporate world for 10 years, did public accounting, did all that stuff. In May of 2019, I had enough earned time to quit my job and use that money to go to school for 3 months for upholstery in New Jersey. So for me, that was like a huge, scary stepping point of no longer having a steady paycheck and just going full on out. And I've always had side gigs. I've always had the dance studio. I've always had, like, you know, side hustles, but to actually make the side hustle, the full hustle, that was always scary. So when I did it and I was succeeding, obviously, you know, that first year or two, you always put in way more hours than you think you're going to. My goal is to actually stop working as much and find a better balance during the week and not necessarily worry about the money or anything like that. And I'm almost at that point now, which is super exciting for me, that I can actually like contain my hours into a normal work week. So for me, that's like my first real step, that I've got enough savings, I've got enough backbone, everything's running smoothly, minus the pandemic part. So that I'm able to have downtime so I can become more creative. Because, you know, when you're always hustling, it's sometimes very draining. And like I said, it's good to step away once in a while and then come back. So that's my first step. My dance studio pretty much runs itself. I have an administrative assistant part-time that is a superstar and I love her to pieces. And so, you know, finding good people is everything. For the upholstery side, I'd like to eventually hire my dad for his retirement job. So I'd like to bring him on. He's been in the hot rod scene his entire life, so he's a, you know, natural match. But I'd like to be able to afford so that he can have a retirement job that's much more comfortable. And people always ask me, "Are you going to expand? You know, you have all these wait lists, you have all this stuff," and I'm not a big, it's not in the big plan to really expand, but rather to just sustain and enjoy the fact that I actually got here. Maybe in, I don't know, 5-10 years, I'll have a different mindset, but I'm just happy right now.
I know that one of the things for makers is that it's hard to imagine expanding because your art is so much a personal expression, right? I mean, I don't know if you feel like you want to take on training other people, or you would only train people that have been trained where you've been trained, or any of those kinds of things.
Yeah, there's also that quality control factor too. Of whatever you put out, you want to make sure it's the best.
Eric, have you got big plans on the horizon? I know that it's a weird thing to think about planning during pandemic, in the sense of like, you know, we all plan and the world laughs, right? I mean, it's not been a pro planning time.
Yeah, I've got to say, one of my favorite quotes about planning comes from, I think, Mike Tyson, which is, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. But I feel like that just pretty much describes the last 12 months for everybody. But I think as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I was lucky to, when my wife and I moved up here about a year ago, a little over a year ago from Somerville. And I was lucky to come up here with a couple of pending jobs and, some contacts down in the Boston area. And so that's been a source of work that's kind of kept me going. It's sustained me. And I've picked up some work for somebody in the area doing contract work for him. That's, work that goes out under his name, not instead of mine. And so I think one of my big goals for the year is to start developing some local business. I think that would be, in some ways it feels like a really small goal, but I think that would also be the same time really meaningful to me and really feel like a step towards this being a more self-sustaining, I mean, it's been self-sustaining, but a more like ongoing business that has room to continue growing in the future.
I like that. How do you define local? I think that's one of those interesting questions in a place like New Hampshire. Local, I think for some people is like within 5 miles. And then local is maybe on both sides of the river valley, depending on where you live, or in Concord, maybe all the way down to Boston. What is your thinking about local, Eric? Kind of what is your reach that you would like to do? And Patrick is like, let's own the world, man. We don't need to be about local.
So I think Patrick's question is an entirely fair question. And there's a couple facets to it. One, I think one of the strengths of moving up here as opposed to living in a large city like Boston is that the area seems to have a very strong buy local ethos. There's a zillion and one farm stands between here and there and everywhere. And I think that really speaks to what people value in the area. And so, if I take over the world here in the Upper Valley, which isn't likely to happen, but if it happens, I'm certainly open to, selling outside of the area. I think on a very practical level, a certain well-known shipping company destroyed about 2 weeks worth of my work last year, 2 years ago, 2019. And it's the logistics of shipping furniture are, problematic. It is what it is, and it's sort of one of those things you just end up dealing with. But I mean, it's in some sense, if I can go and throw it in a van and deliver it in half a day, get back to the shop and get working on something in the afternoon, that's half a day out of the shop. But it's a lot of the stuff, it's a lot of stuff that is off my mind as far as, is it going to get there in one piece? And I guess to Patrick's point is, yes, that's selling to tourists too. And I'm certainly happy to sell to anybody who, walks in my door. I'm not going to go and like check license plates as people come in. So yeah, I mean, I take a fairly expansive view of local, but it's limited in some respects by, just the practicalities of getting stuff from point A to point B.
I love that point about deliveries. I have to say that never even occurred to me. So I'm intrigued by that note. And then Connor.
So I would say my goals are comparatively small compared to those. And a year ago, that would have embarrassed me to say, but I think that's nice for me to like not feel that shows some growth for myself. I actually told my boss a couple of weeks ago, like in our year review, like, what are your year goals? And she asked about personal goals too. I told her I would love to be, by the end of the year, working 4 days a week and have an extra day. And it wasn't specifically for art, but it was art in mind. And then also more time to just dig into deeper civic engagement projects that I'd like to do. I also want to throw this out. I am 24. So I'm still in the mid-20s struggle. Like my husband and I are in a 1-bedroom apartment in Concord, like trying to figure out how to even save in the middle of this housing crisis to buy a house. So it's not on my goal list to do art full time, but I would love, I feel like I'm doing way better than I expected just with my passive time. So I really think that if I were to devote a little more active time to building that business, then it would be I would think it would do well. And one of the things I already did for myself this year that was on my goal list was I used to have an Etsy shop, and that was great in some ways. So I was selling stickers that I had made, which is an easy sell. And so that did get me a lot of traffic, but I just really disagree with Etsy's selling platform and like kind of what it was turning into. So I did my own website this year, which I had really wanted to do. So I've shifted entirely like to my own. I'm using Shopify, which is it's a very popular one. So I did my own website, which is something that I really wanted to do, and just kind of keep that to myself, like choose what my dollars were going towards. And that does mean a little bit more legwork, but I, again, don't mind because I do kind of already have, I don't have a huge following, but I have a high engagement of following. I think they say your average is like 9%, and I have usually between 14 and 18% engagement with who is following me. So like that's been okay with me. And I'm really just trying to cultivate, again, that high engagement following, even if it's not even 500 people. If 14 people out of 500 buy from you, like that's a pretty good turnaround in my opinion. But one of my goals would really be to find my artistic like niche. Like I'm still in the phase where I'm drawing a lot on creative inspiration I've seen from other people, using like trends, which I have absolutely no qualm about. Like I will ride a trend. Like it's a great way to practice. And then again, you're getting a return on your money because you're basically making into something that's already popular. But then I think taking from those what I really find to be an artistic expression of myself, and then being able to build that long term. And again, the makerspace, like this sounds like a sales pitch, but I swear it's not. Like being in the Concord Makerspace has been an incredible opportunity for me. I've just been introduced to people like Andrew, who I think is in here. He's just like knows all the things. And so it's a great to have conversations with people like that. And then again, just be a glow forge. Like that's something I'm never going to own. So being able to cut my own pegboard. I made a sign for myself for my first artist market. I cut my earring cards on the glow forge. I've started doing acrylic earrings, which are very cool. And again, that's like something that's a little bit trendy right now. And it's a perfect complement to polymer clay. So it's just been a way for me to expand a little bit and a little more variety in what I'm making. And again, gives me that opportunity to try all the things and then take from that what I would like to put into my work going forward. Like when I really create, like what is mine, when someone sees my post and they're going to know who made it. Like that is my end goal for 2021 or 2022. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
That's actually fairly ambitious. Finding your whole artist signature voice. I don't know. Like, I'm impressed that you're going to put that on a timeline and get it knocked out. I think that's the. I would hate for you to hit your quarter century mark, Connor, without a completely distinctive signature voice in your art. I think at this point we're going to open it up for questions. I do see great stuff going on in the chat, and I did see a question posed about the time spent on social media. And Jared, I don't know, did you see other questions that you wanted to add into this? Or I'm gonna let you take it from here.
If you happen to ask a question early on, I might have missed it though, which there was a lot of chat.
Which is great.
Do you want to, I might have missed the social media one too though. Oh,
yeah,
right.
So I think it was Adele, right? And Adele, I think, if I read this right, you are a gallery owner in Boscawen and do mixed media art. So maybe you can share with us a little bit about your social media quandaries, and then the folks that Amity answered in the chat, but maybe you should go into a little bit more detail. What platforms you use, how much time you spend on it. Yeah.
Well, this is Adele. To be honest, I do Facebook and Instagram and fairly religiously, but if I like what Amity says, she spends an hour and that's it. But it's a little like Pinterest for me. It all of a sudden takes me down this rabbit hole, and the next thing I know, I've spent like 3 hours, and I'd rather be working on my calligraphy and mixed media. So help.
Okay, so you've gotten permission from Amity to limit your time. Connor, Eric, you want to talk to this about how you approach social media and what platforms you use?
Sure, yeah. So I am a mainly Instagram person, and I use Instagram because that's where polymer clay earrings live, or TikTok, but I don't use TikTok. So that's like another one that's popular right now with creators, but I just haven't got into it. And it's been another personal choice for me, is I don't want something else that's going to suck my time, because I also get sucked into Instagram and Pinterest. And I'm always doing like a million things. I just don't have time for it. But Instagram, I scroll for inspiration, but it's also an engagement thing. So kind of the guidelines for Instagram posting that tend to do well with the Instagram algorithm is you spend 15 minutes commenting and reacting to people's posts before you do a post, and you do 15 minutes before and after a story for the same thing. So if you want Instagram to be showing your stuff more, just make sure you're engaging with people more than just posting an emoji, like actually typing something, liking their post, saving their post, sharing it, whatever. Spending 15 minutes doing that before you make a post, and then 15 minutes afterward tends to do better on an Instagram algorithm. And now they're really shifting to where it's not even likes that are putting you higher. It's when people are saving your content. So I've kind of just been asking my friends like, hey, can you save my post? Like, I don't care if you ever go back to it. But that's really what they're shifting. And that's been a very recent change, like within the past week. So if you have friends, you can say, hey, can you just hit save on my post? And it's the same thing. Like I save other people's posts. And then again, same thing before I post on an Instagram story. And I also don't post anything that isn't genuine to me. It sounds like you feel like you have to, you want to keep on a regular schedule, but like Instagram, I mean, if you don't have to post every single day, but if you're posting once every other day, as long as you're keeping that schedule regular, like that's going to be favorable. And then again, just making it genuine. And then the other thing is hashtags. People think that you need to pick the one with the most followers. But if you put your post in a hashtag that's got 14 million posts in it, your post is going to be gone in half a second. And so you want to make sure you're tagging things like polymer clay earrings, like that is a smaller hashtag following. That's maybe like 14,000 posts. So like if you post something there, like you're more realistically going to be able to be seen by people who are following that hashtag. So I usually stick with hashtags that are between 15 and 25,000 posts. If it's smaller than that, even better. But you also don't want one with just 100 posts, because then nobody's looking at it. So again, the research on it is really important because it's constantly changing. That's all I can say.
And where do you go to get the changing? Where are you getting that there's new algorithms coming in?
To be perfectly honest, other creators who are on a larger scale than I am. And there are people who specifically talk about Instagram marketing that I follow on Instagram. So they're usually the first one to post it. And I'll usually see other artists posting it too, like, hey, please be saving my posts. Like this is how I'm going to be seen. And it's become like the new, like, instead of making a purchase from an artist, like instead of sharing their work, like just click save on their posts. Like it also boosts them. So yeah, that's the number.
Pamela shared in the chat.
Yeah.
She finds out.
There's that.
Eric or Amity, anything to add on social media or keys that you're seeing?
No, that was some really specific, awesome advice.
I would also recommend Facebook groups for your fans. Like for example, last week, I come up with these random ideas and then they make money. And then I get sick of them and I throw them away. So my most recent one was based off of a Facebook group for auto upholsterers. And there's a lot of cranky folks in these groups because, you know, these kids these days, they don't know. But there's a lot of us, these kids. So I was like, hey, let's make your own group. And so now I have a new upholstery group that's literally called Newbies in Auto Boat Upholstery. And there's 300 people in it within a week. And we're already planning classes. So I like Facebook groups. I probably have 30 of them. And then that way you have your very specific places you can go where your fans can go and you can actually interact with them rather than Facebook letting them see posts only when they feel like letting you. So
Amity, do you want to speak to about, I think that you did a successful Facebook Live craft along or event that you made money on too. Is that, did I misfollow your calendar? You did some how to do vintage upholstery. You did some make a vintage.
Yeah, I just throw things up randomly on my Facebook pages. I'm like, hey, does anyone want to learn how to make a vintage camper awning today? And 10 people sign up, and it's a couple hours of my work, and I get something done that I needed to get done anyways. So I
How
do that
much
a
have
lot.
how much have you guys invested in? Eric, I'm gonna let you talk, but I'm just curious, equipment. So how, if you're going to show people how to make a camper awning or whatever, have you invested in cameras, microphones? Are you doing it all with your iPhone? Kind of what do you have? Are you sitting with your ring lights right now so that we can see you better? What is the investment you've made in tools for that? And Eric, I think you had something you were going to add about the social media, so you can come back to that if you want.
Oh man, I mean, I kind of don't. I'm on Instagram because when I was first starting, someone's like, "Oh, you got to get on Instagram, man. That's where all the woodworkers are." And in retrospect, it's like I don't even know where the other woodworkers are. I need to know where the people with money are who want furniture made for them. But I mean, it is a nice way to get out there. It's a nice way to see what people are doing, and it's a nice way to. I think one of the nice things about the woodworking community on Instagram is that people do a nice job of posting, like, I have this problem and I did some blundering around and I found the solution. And so I don't know that I've gotten necessarily a lot of business value out of Instagram, but it's certainly, the number of times it's like, oh, that's a neat thing that someone's doing. And then I run into the same problem like a week later. And I'm like, boy, I sure am glad I saw that last week. That's just been a huge boon to me. I think the thing for furniture specifically is that, on the custom side of furniture, it tends to be people saying, I want a thing that fits my vision maybe more than I see this thing and I want to buy it. So, like, yes, you can go to a furniture store and do that. And if you're asking someone to build you a piece, it seems to be more, people seem to want more input. So I think circling back to what we first said, it's a nice way for people to see the range of options you can do. But I haven't necessarily found, that it's driven a lot of business to my door. So, there you have it.
So I'm taking it that you have not invested a lot in high quality photography of your furniture or any of those kinds of things to give you content, or
I have, but my best pictures are on my website, and I will post them to Instagram as well. But my goal is really more to, I mean, I've sort of been using my website as this is what everything looks like when it's nice and finished, and here's some nice angles, nice whatever, and we did actually invest in a decent enough camera. I happen to own a number of sufficiently decent lenses, like from the pre-digital era, and a set of lights, and that's pretty key stuff, and a backdrop. I haven't invested in a video camera because I'm way too ugly to be on YouTube. So, so that's the kind of investment that I've seen be helpful, but I'm not doing that for strictly the social media aspect of it.
I see Patrick, the former graphic designer, is busy offering good advice. And so, do you want to speak to
I'm
any of the
marketer? All I think about is how would I market that? Sorry.
No, I'm really open to hearing how I would market that, because let's be honest, sometimes that's the hardest part of this, is like going and finding somebody who wants to spend the money on it, and then pricing accurately so that you are getting getting out of it what you put into it.
Pricing's a big thing. That's what I work with a lot of people on for solopreneurs and stuff like that, is charging enough to make sure that you can survive. And maybe even put away money for retirement, put a little bit in savings.
Kennedy, that was the accounting side of you, clearly.
I try to keep it under wraps, but it comes in sometimes.
I'm gonna throw it back up for anyone, other questions or new topics. Feel free to ask. Or we have a few more questions I know that we have.
I could ask one too. I know Eric mentioned in the chat, I think, about finance and resources, and actually identified a class that Amity taught about understanding financial resources out there. Are there other resources that you've used early on, or if there's ones that you've noticed that you think that makers could really help along? Any of you three, I guess, to jump in?
Are you talking like in a specific craft medium, or like just in general?
I would say it was kind of in general, but even if it's just more about your specific craft.
Yeah, I would say Patreon has been a big one for me. I am subscribed to a couple of Patreon people, and it's nice too because you're supporting an artist for a fairly low cost. So I follow a couple of really high following polymer clay artists, and they talk about everything from how to market your specific business all the way through, just proper finishing techniques, so like the proper way to sand, how to do clean backings, things like that too. So I think that kind of falls back under the topic of every answer we've done, YouTube and Patreon, and it's just finding that niche, like where are the people who are working in your craft hanging out. And I think what Amity's saying was perfect, because polymer clay specifically, there's not a huge Facebook following for, but again, it is TikTok and Instagram. And then on the other side, I had mentioned earlier too, I used to sell stickers. Reddit was the only place like I ever got traction for stickers. It wasn't really through Instagram or Facebook or anything like that. So yeah, it does take some time to kind of follow that and find that a little bit, and then just finding someone who's better than you and like being okay with them being better than you, and then asking the questions you need to. And most people are really open to having that conversation. And if they're not, then that says something about them.
Someone pointed out that the Claremont Makerspace has an upcoming.
That they can't find. Brennan, do you want to speak to the marketing class that you guys have got coming up? Or Amanda, you said, yes, we do.
We did just add a marketing event that actually Vital Communities is putting together, and I'll drop the link in there in the chat.
Excellent.
Amity, you
And
mentioned
Amity, yeah.
SCORE mentors. I'm curious, anything to add on that, or has anyone else used mentors or gotten support from others as they've either both on the making part or the business part?
So on the upholstery side, it is very competitive. There's not many upholsterers left in the country. The school I went to only accepted 8 students, and they had a 2-year wait list. And as soon as you got out, people were getting scoffed right up. Like, even if they failed the class, they still got jobs. It was crazy. But the issue with the upholstery is that a lot of them are very closely held secrets. And it's been really hard finding a mentor locally, but I found that if I find a mentor like in California, where I'm not a competitive threat, I have better luck finding someone who's willing to help me, and I pay for their, whatever they would have been making doing upholstery to teach me some things that I don't know. And then again, I also started making peer groups on Facebook so that I could find other people who were kind of in the same boat and we could work things together. And I found that that was really helpful. SCORE and the SBA also has great resources. Allison's putting together an amazing program as well at the River Valley Community College. But I found SCORE was helpful just for the moral support. I called them when I started doing my own accounting business. And I said, hey, I'm a burnt out CPA. Do you happen to have any other burnt out CPAs that were once in my spot that can help me? And they literally found me one. And I thought that that was really helpful, just to talk to someone that was in my space, where I said, I really like what I do. I just can't, I'm physically burnt out. And they're like, oh yeah, we're totally been there. It's totally normal. And like made me feel 100 times better And that's where I found the most helpfulness from SCORE, is that there's a lot of people with a lot of industry experience that can kind of walk you through those moments of, am I doing the right thing?
That's great.
I'm curious about you guys pivoting. How much of your sales has always been online, and how much of it is just online as a by virtue of the pandemic? And do you think you're going back? So I know that somebody in the chat talked about that they went to Mary West, that you go to local shops and fairs. Connor, I presume that at some point that was true for you, maybe. And you know, Amity or Eric, I don't know if you've ever done farmers markets or crafts fairs or any of those kinds of things. How much you guys think you're going to return to that, and how much you think that the future is cast and your business lies online? Nobody wants to make predictions. It's too scary.
Yeah, I actually did my first in-person market during the pandemic. It was the Concord Arts Bazaar that took place at, totally blanking on the name of the park. The park in Concord. Yeah, so it was actually the first one I ever did. It was Concord Arts Market, or no, it was Concord. It was the place and Concord Handmade. So they had like their joint art bazaar, and I did really well at that. So I don't know if it was because people were coming out to support artists, or it was just something to do outside that was safe. No, it was Mary, it was like a one-off. So I know that they have the summer arts market that happens in Bicentennial Square. It was actually at a park over by like South Street. I'm just totally blanking on the name of the park for whatever reason. But it was outdoors. So I think that was the other thing too. It was in the fall. It was great weather. I think people were just itching to get out and do something. So again, I did really well there, and I did well at Concord Handmade's Concord, like their winter art pop-up. So I definitely see myself doing Rollins Park. Yes. Thank you, Jared. I definitely see myself doing more of that. Oh, sorry. I'm getting like a lot of white balancer. Yeah. And again, I think being able to sit in front of someone, that's really where I do best anyway, is just person-to-person marketing and having a conversation with someone. And that is really where I thrive. And so I definitely see myself doing more of that.
Mary shared in the chat that she's getting more repeat customers online due to the pandemic. And Joanne just said she goes to a lot of local markets and fairs to sell, but so it looks like there is a shift online. Eric or Amity, are you, either of you, seeing a shift to online, or any new COVID causing any adjustments?
Eric, do you want to go first?
I mean, it's certainly been an adjustment. I know that there are furniture makers who do a lot of online sales, even small furniture makers. And they tend to do more sort of small production run type building. Whereas I am trying to go more the custom route. So I think, I foresee my work remaining, the online is more somewhat a tool to promote, and that, barring a change in how I try to market, build, and sell stuff, that it will likely remain, at least somewhat an in-person thing. And I think, to the point of craft fairs, I think that is something I have not done, but that's certainly something I'm looking into, as hopefully the pandemic is, let's all hope, coming slowly to a close, fingers crossed. And I think, to the point of the outdoor stuff, is excellent. I talked to somebody else at the Makerspace who does jewelry, and she went to a show, an outdoor craft fair in Woodstock, Vermont, and she said she did quite well there, that she was pretty much busy all day. And I think that echoes, sorry, my brain just totally went out to lunch. help, who's Connor's experience, that people are just itching to get out and go and do stuff. So that's certainly an option to look into for the future.
I put up
Any of
as
you have,
a.
I'm sorry, Andy, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, do any of you have referral relationships? So Eric, I'm thinking about, do you have relationships with interior designers or those kinds of things who refer you as a custom furniture maker? Or do you have retail relationships where Amity, I don't know, like with antique car dealers? I know you're not looking for more business, but I mean, I'm wondering about other styles of sales and promotion that you might use.
I could tie that into what I was just gonna say, because it kind of leads into the other topic too. Is I've just put up a profile picture. That's George. This is my camper. This is my mobile upholstery unit. And it's not necessarily that I always go places and do people's cars immediately there, but this is a catchy eye catcher. So when I set up at car shows, people want to come see the camper. They want to see what's in it. And when they go inside, it's got a ton of samples, and knock on wood, Eric, hint, hint, wink, wink, we'll eventually have my sewing table in it. But it's kind of my booth. And so I sit at a lot of car shows and I just kind of have my own cooking show. Like I'll bring a steering wheel to do, and I'll sit there and sew it up so people can actually watch the process, and that they can feel like they're part of the process, that they can pick and choose what type of fabrics and they can physically touch them. And I find that that's really helpful, is to have something that kind of grabs the eye and brings people over. So it was worth the money to invest in that display. It's also handy because it's on wheels and it goes places. But I found that that's been the best advertisement, is just the fancy camper. But the other thing is that when I first started, I actually wrote up a letter saying, hey, I just graduated from upholstery school. This is what I do. I'm getting my word out. And here's a bunch of cards if you happen to have anyone who stops at your auto place and needs upholstery done. And I specifically targeted the restoration shops and the like foreign car mechanics. And I just sent out a letter and said, hey, this is where I'm at. I'm not an expert yet, but this is what I'm doing. And that's been almost 99% of my referrals. And I offered in the letter to buy them lunch. So I've paid for a lot of lunches. But pizza seems to be the hot item for the commission. But I found that that's really helpful, just reaching out and just saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm not naturally a very good extrovert, so letters are safe.
As a person who's older than probably most everybody here, and the one thing I tell my 30-year-old, 28-year-old, and 26-year-old, networking, 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 face to face. This, internet, Facebook, it's not as good as getting in front of somebody and making a connection. Because when you talk to somebody, one of the nice things that happens is you hear their story, and you can connect with their story, and they can connect with your story. And that doesn't happen, in a few little lines, like the difference of the conversation we're having versus the conversation in the chat. There's the perfect example of it. So I tell everybody, go everywhere, meet everybody, do everything, join every group within reason.
Jennifer just added in the chat, building off what Amity has, is when she is at farmers markets also, that people love to come over and watch making happen. So it's a magnet for bringing attention and getting people to come and see what you're doing.
Adele, you mentioned in the chat that you are a member of the League of New Hampshire Craftsmen, which I know is a juried entry. I'm wondering if others of you look for endorsements like that, or credentials like that, or others of you that have connections like that you find to be really helpful to you. And that can be any of the three of you or anybody that's here. Like, it feels like we have a lot of experienced people that have their own stories to share, and we'd love to hear them.
I can go. I was talking to some more established furniture makers, and their experience has been is that those professional associations have been really helpful as far as driving business, and that, you know, like New Hampshire Furniture Masters is one such group. There's a, you know, furniture makers group in Vermont, and that does tend to actually drive business for them. So, you know, as that's something else that it's like, okay, you know, I'm starting to reduce my Boston ties and associations, you know, and now starting to move some of that up here. And it's, you know, I've certainly gotten work from being a member of an association down in Boston. And, you know, like I said, trying to get a little bit more of a local focus. It's definitely something to, you know, start shifting into for up here.
Anyone else have any groups they're part of that have been really helpful?
And not necessarily, but Facebook pages and Instagram pages that are industry specific, like in upholstery, it's the Hog Ring. And when you have a really nice piece of work that you think is great, you just tag them. And a lot of times they have people searching for stuff to put on their pages. So sharing that information is really helpful if you just tag them in some of your work to get your stuff kind of shown to a greater audience.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yay.
And as where I can't actively be baking clay on site, I wear my earrings all the time. And I used to not do that because I felt like it was weird. But the moment I started doing it, I wear my biggest pieces and the things that are like the most obviously handmade. And I get questions all the time. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've literally stood in a grocery aisle and gave someone my Instagram handle, and they like followed me while we were standing there because I'm just wearing like obnoxiously loud earrings, and they're like, "Oh my God, I love your earrings." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you." Made them myself. So, and on the other side, like, that is not exactly what most people consider like a fine art. So there's not really like the League of New Hampshire Craftsmen is not going to take me in as a polymer clay and acrylic earring artist. But kind of following on that personal network and word of mouth, like my friends all the time, like anytime they're wearing my earrings, like they'll tag them. And then again, that's kind of given me openings to sell in other places. So I'm working right now to get some earrings in with Bonafide. So they'll have some wood earrings. I think Penumbra actually sells some of my stuff. So they sell some of my other polymer. So they sell some air plant hangers that I've made. That again is just like a personal connection that I've got. And that's really, and exactly what Annie was saying too, with like trade specific groups is a great one. Yeah.
Well, thank you. This has been a really cool conversation. There's been so much going on in the chat, and it's really cool that everyone here, and we have 3 really incredible panelists, and that everyone here brought their own experience and lessons and tips in the chat. And we are about out of time, though. It's 5:02. Any final thoughts, Allison or Brendan or anyone else?
Just thank you. So interesting. Whoever, I think it was Marty in the stories, who I think are a personal historian. So no surprise that you love the stories, but yay, stories, stories, stories.
I hope we can organize another panel at some point. This was I think the first one we've done, giving it a shot. So hopefully we can try another one. It's really cool to just see people connect. I know it's different.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
COVID.
Nice, we should say.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Stay healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Connor, Eric, and Amity. Have a great week, everyone.
Be well, make art.
Thanks.
You too.